Hello from my bathroom floor where I just ripped up 60-year-old vinyl flooring and temporarily replaced it with these adorable and much cleaner vinyl tiles. Considering just how terrible the previous floor was, from the men's locker room smell to the rotting water damage, the questionable stains and rust marks, oh, and this. I can't help but wonder the horrors a carpet would have contained, even just in 6 years instead of 60. Just how did the carpet industry manage to convince people that carpets in the bathroom, the kitchen, and the toilet were a great idea? Was it a campaign of very effective lies? Or were carpets just built different back then? Let's dig through the shag pile to find out. Prior to the 20th century, rugs, not carpets, were much more the standard. The difference being that a rug is placed upon a finished floor, often with the edges or more of said floor showing, and a carpet is wall to wall. At the very least, this is the definition I'll be using for this video, even if it was a bit fuzzy through the eras. The benefit to rugs, provided they aren't of absurd size, is that they can be taken outside and beaten to remove the dust. Everyday care utilized a hard bristle broom to sweep. Instructions for deep cleaning larger carpets with a pile rather than flat woven often recommended either a powdered cleaner or a sponging with something like an ammonia solution. Some of the recipes got extremely complex, others less so. I do feel like using butter and then maybe instead letting a dog go at it instead of soap might be the cleanest you'd ever get. Powder could then be swept off with the broom and the solution carefully cleaned out with sponged water and trying to dry it up quickly. Make sure to do it on a sunny, ideally warm day. Vacuum cleaners were around in the latter half of the 19th century, technically invented in 1860 with a hand-cranked brush and a fireplace bellows. But not surprisingly, only took off when electricity was widely available in the early 20th century. In terms of daily care, that was a distinct shift. Deep cleaning was still the same effort from the sounds of it, though. A few smaller rugs in a large space could be far more practical to keep clean than one massive one, since they could be easily taken outside. And something that wasn't removable from the floor at all was just a bad idea. Hence why hardwood floors and tile were the standard rather than carpet for so long. They weren't considered hands-off when it came to care, but a quick wipe for spills, a few dustings and cleanings a week, their recommendation, not mine, and occasional wax or other protective service added. Basically, long-term efforts rather than everyday short-term. Carpets required daily care, according to most articles, as well as regular trips outside. In fact, when full-size carpets first had their moment of popularity around the turn of the century, hygiene was a major topic. Though medical knowledge had taken leaps and bounds over the previous decades, just what lurked in places that couldn't be harshly cleaned and scrubbed as needed seems to be a constant concern. It was just a balancing act of hygiene, so far as germs and dust goes, and keeping the feet and space warm, since there were more than enough fears that exposure to cold and moisture was what set off so many of these illnesses. With the amount of effort it takes with modern devices to keep any house clean, it's no wonder that was an important discussion. I'm spending multiple hours every day scrubbing, sanding, and tearing out old flooring, which doesn't even tackle the regular dusting and mopping. I'm exhausted by the end of the day, but I know I need to take care of myself and eat well to keep up. That's why I'm so pleased that the sponsor for today's video is Green Chef. Green Chef is a meal kit service that makes cooking tasty and healthy meals easy. They have farmers market quality produce, globally inspired recipes, and pre-prepared ingredients. By the end of the day, I am far too tired to make up a grocery list and go find everything I need, let alone decide on what to make and make it. With Green Chef, I get to choose from over 80 weekly menu options that arrive to my door ready to start. They have tons of customization and options available depending on what you need, whether that's gluten-free, plant-based, protein-packed, or Mediterranean. I admittedly love vegetables, but since I'm cooking for myself most of the time, I just don't make it through them before they start to go off. This way, I'm not wasting food, and with all the menu options, I can not only choose things that I'm going to love, but I can make sure there'll be options I can use for leftovers the next day. Green Chef takes the stress out of cooking and making sure I'm keeping up with what my body needs while I'm doing so much work. I love Green Chef, and I think you would too. If you're looking for an easier way to eat well, head to greenchef.com or click the link below and use code 50Rudolph to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Green Chef box, plus 20% off for 2 more months. That's code 50Rudolph at greenchef.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Green Chef box, plus 20% off for 2 months. Thanks again to Green Chef for sponsoring today's video. Our next question is how exactly carpet managed to move from the living spaces. The earliest mention I came across was from 1937, saying that the carpet in the bathroom is slowly rising to popularity. Not much else comes up until the 1950s, at which point it seems to be everywhere. So let's start with why people wanted it before we get to why they thought it would be a reasonable idea. The word luxury not only shows up here, but over and over again. Comfort, warmth, and no more mopping. Wall-to-wall carpeting has become a symbol of luxury. It is the choice of many decorators because it is dramatic and sweeping in effect. It takes away that hard clinical look of the average bathroom. Additionally, magazines love to talk about how useful carpets were for decor. Adding them into the bathroom meant you could have color coordination throughout the room and house. Not that there weren't just as many tile and hard flooring options in bright colors, so I'm not sure that was the deciding difference. All of which leaves us with some interesting ideas, but not many answers. Why were carpets seen as luxurious and ideal for decor? To understand that, we need to start with fiber. Previously, carpets were mostly made of wool, and as a natural fiber, the price fluctuated constantly, but was generally fairly expensive, especially when thinking about the size of carpets and how much gets packed in there. While wool is incredibly hard-wearing and does well with moisture, it still has its limits, but those were about to be exceeded. I did an entire video on the history of synthetic fibers recently if you want to learn more. The first man-made, though not technically synthetic fiber, was rayon. It was better suited to mimicking silk rather than wool. However, during World War II, there were shortages on so many things, wool included. So Firth Carpet Company mixed a little into their carpets to carry things further. They noted rayon was too languid to make up the entire amount, however. Whatever that means, I do know that rayon carpets don't handle water well. They discolor when they get wet, so that's definitely not a good option for the bathroom. Next up was nylon. Fully nylon carpet made it into the market in 1948 after DuPont spent years of research to manage just the right texture. The only problem was that it was extremely expensive. But just a few years in, with a little more experimentation and building up of machinery, it went from $42 a yard to a range between $8 and $35. The style range was also enticing, with not only variegation in color, but texture and height. Sculpted piles with the geometric or organic patterns cut in were the trendy thing in the late 1950s. Acetate, blended with nylon or wool, was the next faux silk to enter the pile. More faux wools also appeared, such as acrylon, a brand name version of acrylic, which was so popular in carpets they predicted shortages within the next couple of years while they ramped up production. Their ad from 1960 claims to show a variety of hard tests on their fiber. It doesn't stain, crush, or wear, supposedly. In fact, most of these synthetic options claimed a resistance to stains. A little soap and water is all you need. Carpet your bathroom. Why not? A 1951 article begins, "Don't worry about getting it wet. A slight amount of surface damp won't harm the carpet. These synthetic carpet fibers resist absorbing water after all. Tell that to the rotting hole in my bathroom floor. Turns out the water still goes somewhere. The keynote here, though, the mention of joining the pieces of carpet together by tape and the recommendation to find one that doesn't ravel around the edges, which means it's not adhered to the floor. It's just room shaped. Potentially a key difference in how this was supposed to work at the beginning. A few years later, in 1954, there was an article labeling it Remove and Wash. It's easy to install yourself and can be removed in sections to put into the washing machine. Just make sure to find pre-shrunk styles that are meant to be laundered. Turns out, by this point, broadloom style carpets were more common, woven 9 to 18 feet wide, which is definitely not meant to go in the washing machine. In general, people continue to argue that the rug style of carpet was by far the better option. It would be cheaper, saving on the edges and on installation, and you can send it out to be professionally cleaned. Of course, this assumes you already have a finished floor underneath. Still easier than refinishing the beat up old hardwood, supposedly. This easy to care for argument just keeps going, too. It's present throughout the 1960s and 70s. Carpet squares take off in the late 1960s, so they're even easier to replace, and they had some pretty inventive color patterns. Advertisements continue to use terms like indestructible, stain resistant, no care, long wearing, mildew free, waterproof, and more. Basically, it was advertised like linoleum or vinyl was, just with the ease of installing it yourself, the comfort underfoot, and the ability to swap out colors to keep up with fashion. The backing also changed throughout, moving from wool or cotton to including rayon or even jute. Rubber backed mats and occasionally carpets come up in the ads as well. They just aren't quite as common because they aren't as easy to launder, even if they do theoretically prevent moisture from making its way through. This easy care concept carried the carpet into the kitchen as of the early 1960s. It was softer underfoot, absorbed sound, and falling objects. And as before, it's easier to vacuum than to scrub. Softness and safety, claims one article. Another declared the latest development in kitchen glamour is the introduction of carpet, noting that not only does nylon resist most stains, if it's burned or seriously damaged, all you have to do is replace a small square. The dense pile will hide all the seams for you. Not everyone was won over, however. Plenty of advertisements start with things like, believe it or not, carpeting in a kitchen is practical, or a kitchen carpet for women who don't believe in kitchen carpet. The claims they make about how much better your life will be, frankly, are almost convincing. If you believe them, silence. Golden silence. No chatter, less breakage, less noise. Everything's hushed up. Even your kids. Children behave better on a carpeted floor. That's just been proven. Stains and water just stand there, waiting for you to throw in the sponge. What I think most of us who have seen the aftermath of these carpets realize is that it's not waiting for long. Those stains and the dirt will find their way deep in between the fibers and stick around, if not evicted, rapidly, which may have been less of a problem when flooring was expected to only last maybe 10 years or so with style cycles. I say this noting that my stairs are the only place where a carpet is in this house, and I'm pretty sure it has about 30 years of ground-in dirt there. That's not coming out with a little bit of cleaning. Some of these issues take time to recognize, or removing the carpet to find what hid underneath. Staining, grease, curling, static electricity, and general sanitation were brought up as issues in the height of carpet popularity, so it's not like it was all bliss. This somehow isn't the worst of it. I would be remiss if I didn't continue on to show you the true horrors. The extent of carpeting that took us so far, we were finally shocked to our senses. Or I'd like to imagine it that way. The amount of old carpet still hanging around older houses says otherwise. But for this part of the journey, we need to look to shag. Plush carpet seems to show up around 1967 with shag in catalogs by 1969. It has a longer pile and a tighter twist, so it isn't a fluffy, dense mass, but highly textured. Polyester was also an option for fiber by this point, but apparently was better for the plush versions, and nylon and wool for the twisted. Also, a quick note that for soil resistance, they recommended either gray or avocado. So that answers why we were cursed with green moss floors for decades after. According to this article, by 1970, 10% of the US's carpets were shag. Carpet just kept getting longer and fuller, and it started growing off the floor and onto the furniture. It seems to start with adding secondary mats of the same material to the bathtub, toilet, and sink areas. Makes a little bit of sense because these are the places that you need to be able to launder and deal with the most amount of moisture. So having rugs that are washable on top of the carpet that is not does make a little bit of sense. But then it starts to creep up to the toilet lid. Before long, it's on the toilet tank as well, and the scale, and the tissue box. Even, brace yourself for this one, on the toilet seat. You know that didn't get washed enough. Ironically, shag was also acknowledged as taking more care and cleaning than regular carpet. So we had now progressed from synthetics that were designed, or at least advertised, as requiring far less difficult care than other flooring, meant to be easily taken apart and laundered in a machine, to full room, stapled down shag that honestly required almost immediate attention and constant vacuuming, and wasn't easy to wash. That's gonna take forever to dry. The reality of how we ended up with carpets everywhere is that wool rugs that stretched from wall to wall were incredibly expensive in the 19th century. They were something to be admired. As synthetic versions started to appear, attempting to mimic wool, wool prices started to drop. All fabrics, not just carpets, saw that shift. To prove that they weren't just equal to the wool of old, advertisements promised more and more performance, technology, and easy to care for beyond your wildest dreams, all with the luxury of those old wool carpets. Of course, as nearly every home carpeted over hard floors, and as so many of us grew up with fuzzy bathrooms, myself included, it stopped feeling like a luxury. No amount of soft underfoot would compare with the musty smell in the bathroom or the greasy feel in the kitchen. Once carpet got cheap enough to staple down, it stopped being truly washable, and it stopped being a luxury. And we discovered that even if the nylon didn't absorb the stains, the subfloor did. Which is why I'm so happy that I only have a couple staircases worth of carpet to remove from this house. I already have the new runner, I just need a little bit of time and a lot of elbow grease. So be sure to stay tuned.